Shubhadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Guru Chane Nirvisesha Shanjavadi Paschati Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shadvaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhakti. So, the actual topic we're going to talk about, I could give it several titles. But I'd like to explain the essence of what I would try to communicate in the next few days. And that is that our ability to advance in Krishna consciousness, and specifically as we're discussing here, our ability to improve in our chanting, it's not just a function of our effort, but it also is greatly affected by our own nature, our own psychology, our own attitudes and consciousness, way more than we may imagine.
Can I just have your attention for one moment? Any of the Russian-speaking devotees here able to translate? Because we have two translators and both are missing.
Oh. And they didn't understand what you just said.
Well, if they understand enough to translate, they would have heard, right? Anyone who speaks Russian able to translate until...
Oh, okay. So, the aspect of forgiveness, and the aspect of humility will come up in this discussion more as byproducts of what I wanted to talk about than actual foundations. And I think a lot of us aren't aware of how our own consciousness works. And I hope to make you more aware of it, and then you can see how it's affecting your Krishna consciousness. One of the ways we can understand this is by how we can understand how our consciousness works is by how we confront, or more specifically, how we respond to difficulty. Like when you're faced with a difficulty, and I think when we're chanting, one of the main difficulties is focusing and keeping our energy high and keeping our devotion high. There's a problem with apathy. There's a problem with lack of focus. There's a problem with lack of effort. And there's a problem with lack of energy. And there's a problem with distraction. You agree? Yeah, those are common problems. And one of the biggest mistakes we can make, and probably maybe the most important thing I'm ever going to say to you, is that it's not because of the chanting. It has nothing to do with the chanting. It has everything to do with you. And our tendency is to blame it on the chanting. I don't have a taste. It's the problem. The reason I'm not focused is I don't have a taste. So indirectly, we're blaming it on the holy name. Do you understand? It's the problem is, I'm not really. It sounds like I'm blaming it on myself, but actually, it's just become an excuse. It sounds like I'm accepting responsibility, but I'm actually making an excuse. I'm not pure, and you have to be pure to chant the holy name. You have to have a taste to be able to focus, which is all true. But we don't realize by saying that, we're revealing our own nature. And what is that nature? That nature is, if something is difficult, I become apathetic. That's actually what's happening. When you're chanting and you're not focused, or you're apathetic, or you're not putting energy, it's not because of the holy name. Ultimately, it's because of your nature of your consciousness. Let me explain this further. I know this is maybe not what you're going to hear normally in the Hare Krishna movement, and it might be a little bit new to you and somewhat subtle and difficult to understand, but I think it's important to understand it because it'll help you a lot. And this next example will reveal much about yourself. When you confront a problem, a difficulty in your life, whatever it is, and you think about it, how you react to difficulty, probably if you think about it enough, you will realize it's not the specific difficulty that causes your reaction, it's how you react to every difficulty. You agree? Think about it. It's a general way you respond to difficulty. Whether it's 9/11, whether the GBC passes a resolution you don't like, whether your temple president, your wife or husband says something you don't like, whether the weather's too hot or too cold, you have too much money, too little money, the prasadam is good, the prasadam is bad. We tend to react in a very similar way to obstacles and difficulties, not based on the difficulty, but based on us. It's a very important point. If I right now took a bunch of cow dung and threw it at everybody, you would respond differently. Some of you would laugh. Some of you would throw it back at me and laugh. Some of you would throw it back because you're angry. Some of you would feel offended. Some of you would be upset that your brand new sari or dhoti's got brown spots on it. Some of you might even walk away. You just can't deal with it. Just leave. Some of you might start complaining, talking. You might be talking for the next year about it. Maybe the next 3 lifetimes. You understand what I'm saying? Think about how you respond to something. When you're upset, do you just talk about it, tell everybody about it, and do nothing about it? Some of us do, right? Some of us laugh, some of us don't even care. Some of us become depressed. Some just complain. Some fight back. The revolutionaries among us, they'll fight back. We'll go to the top. We'll go to our guru. We'll go to the GBC. We'll start complaining. We'll be on the internet writing letters, blogging. We all respond differently to the same situation because of who we are. And the reason I'm saying this is because I want you to see how you respond to the chanting of the holy name. What do you do? How do you respond to it? When the kirtan isn't the way you want, do you blame the kirtan leader for your lack of absorption? Do you blame, oh, that kirtan leader doesn't have bhakti, and that's why I couldn't get into it. Well, you carry a bhakti meter, right? And so you've got everybody figured out. And if the bhakti meter isn't over 6.5, you don't get into the kirtan. Yes? Some of us? Yes? Sorry to be so blunt, but we know these things are true. And so we blame our lack of absorption on the kirtan leader. Not on my lack of devotion, not on my lack of effort, not on my apathy, not on my whatever. No, it was his fault. No, it was that melody. He was singing that melody wrong. I couldn't get into it. Yes? That's not the way the melody sang. It's sang this way. He didn't know it. So I just walked out of the temple. So that's the reason I wasn't into the kirtan. So there's a reality that many of us, instead of accepting responsibility for our own failure, we blame the process as the problem. There's too many people chanting japa here. That's the problem. Or it's kirtan was too loud or too quiet, or the kirtan. We blame the actual process for our own failure. We curse the process. You understand? A little bit? It's very common. We blame the teacher. I couldn't learn because of the teacher. Or whatever, the weather. Or the accent. It's the American accent. I'm not into American accents. I couldn't pay attention to the lecture. we're actually responding according to our nature and blaming our response on something outside of us. That's the problem. You understand? I can't change. This is the way I am. Then it gets even more complicated because it looks like you're accepting responsibility, but you're actually blaming yourself for your lack of responsibility. I can't change. That seems like, okay, I'm accepting responsibility. This is why I'm not chanting well, because I can't change. But then that's also false, because you can. So I want you to look at your consciousness, so you can see how your consciousness is affecting your ability to elevate yourself in your chanting. It's not just your neophyte nature, and it's not just your impurity. And it's not just your lack of knowledge. Your nature, your psychological nature, plays very much into it. Look at the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam describes something which I think is quite amazing, and I think is quite important for us to understand. Generally, we understand when you come in touch with pure devotional service, because it's transcendental, at least it elevates you to Sattva Guna. It puts you in Sattva Guna. Prabhupada said that. He said, when you hear the Bhagavatam, when you sit in the Bhagavatam class, you're elevated to Sattva Guna. But Bhagavatam says something amazing. It says you can do devotional service in the mode of ignorance. Devotional service is not in the mode of ignorance, but we can be in consciousness in the mode of ignorance while we do devotional service. Isn't that amazing? It's like the devotional service didn't even touch us. It's like our nature just overtook us. I could be chanting in the mode of ignorance. I could be chanting in passion, which is a huge problem, right? Hey, look at me, I chant good. You could be chanting japa and be in the mode of passion, thinking, hey, do people notice how well I'm chanting? How straight I'm sitting, how nice I'm pronouncing. Maybe you think like that. Or maybe you think, all these devotees, I can just see they're spaced out when they're chanting. Nobody has the focus and concentration I have. That's total mode of ignorance. That's chanting in the mode of ignorance. Did you know that? That's the way Bhagavatam describes ignorance. I'm the best. I am the best devotee. Everybody's got problems, and I can see their problems. And I'm chanting, and I'm somewhat aware of others' problems. That's the mode of ignorance. So we can do devotional service, and our own psychology can contaminate us to the point that our relationship with something pure becomes impure. Yes? We can find fault with devotees. So you come in touch with bhakti, and then you make aparad because of the devotional service of someone else that you didn't like. Is it his fault or is it your fault? Whose fault is it? If you could say, Prabhu, you're offensive. And you say, it's his fault. He did something offensive. That's why I became offensive. Is that a good reason? Of course not. Do we do that? Do we think it's their fault that I'm offensive? Yes, sometimes. Some even faulted Prabhupada for 4 regulative principles. They said there should only be 3. It's not my fault I can't follow 4. It's Prabhupada's fault that he gave 4. You understand the mentality? What I'm trying to say is this mentality, we've developed this over lifetimes. We've brought this into this body, into this life, and we brought it into the Hare Krishna movement, and we're bringing it into our activities. And we need to become aware of it and purify it and do something about it. Now, a lot of devotees will say, well, I am doing something about it. I'm chanting. That's good, but my point is your mentality can adversely affect your chanting if you're not aware of it and don't direct it properly. So that's what I want to talk about. And any of you are scared to deal with it, you're welcome to leave now, because What I want you to do is see it. You see, the problem is we see through our consciousness, but we don't see it. We don't see our consciousness. We see through it. We're having a course last weekend, last Saturday, Sunday night, we started a course on beliefs. And I made the point that most of us are seeing and acting through beliefs that we don't even know we have. They're there, we're seeing through them, but we're not seeing them. So often we're acting through our consciousness, but we're not seeing how our consciousness acts. We're not transparent enough to know. So I'm saying that's the problem, but the problem isn't that. The problem is my reaction to it. It's always the problem is the reaction. It's never the situation. Even if the situation is the problem, ultimately it's not the problem. Ultimately it's our reaction. And you can learn so much about yourself if you just monitor your reactions. Monitor what discourages you. Monitor where your focus goes. Some of us, when something bad happens, our consciousness entirely focuses on it. We get absorbed in it. Isn't it? We're just like, this is really bothering me, and we're focused on it. Our attention is going on a problem. Sometimes we do that with ourselves. Sometimes we do that with other people. We're focused on their problem. Sometimes we're focused on our problem. I'm so bad, I'm so this, I'm so that. It's just a nature we have. We need to be aware of it because it's detrimental. You agree? To focus on something that negative is detrimental. To look at it and say this is a problem, that's fine. But now you focus on the solution. Some of us stay fixed on the problem. And that becomes a contamination. And then when you do that, the next step is discouragement. I can't really do this well. You actually convinced yourself by your intense focus on the problem that you can't do it. One of the biggest mistakes you can make, anybody can make, is to focus on a problem rather than the solution. Because as you focus on the problem, whenever you start saying something like, this is how I am, I can't change, I can't overcome this problem, I don't care anymore, it's all because you focused on the problem, not the solution. Very important point. You don't say those things when you focus on solutions. But you have to recognize, if you do that, that nature of your consciousness to be focused on negative more than positive. You ever do that? I can't do this the best I can, won't get any better, this is who I am. Apathy, I can't, why try, I've tried, it doesn't work. You ever do that? It's the best I can do, don't push me. When you say those things, you should recognize you're seeing the world through that filter.